Hello and welcome. We're going to do a what's for dinner video, and I'm going to focus on a 3.8 pound roast that I had in my freezer. It was a rainy, chilly day, and it just seemed like the perfect day to make a pot roast. So I went to the Pioneer Woman's website and I got her recipe for the perfect pot roast, and it's pretty simple ingredients. There is my 3.8 top sirloin roast. I bought it on sale. Just needs some salt and pepper, and then it called for 1 cup of red wine and 2 to 3 cups of beef stock. So I'm just using this beef with red wine, just broth that I picked up, some thyme and some rosemary. It called for fresh, I'm using dry, some onions and some carrots, and then also a little bit of olive oil. So according to the recipe, I'm preheating the oven to 275 degrees, and then I'm heating my cast iron Dutch oven to add a little bit of olive oil. She also said that you can do half butter, half olive oil. I have done that in the past, but today I'm just using a little bit of olive oil. And she just said to cut the onions in half and cut the carrots into 2-inch slices. And then when the pan is hot, just to cook the onions and then also the carrots. I think maybe it speeds up the process. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick to her recipe. I don't really feel like this was necessary. Maybe to enhance the flavor, maybe to get a little bit more flavor in the bottom of the pot for whenever you go to sear the meat. So I was just cleaning up a little bit of what I had left for carrots, and that has always been one of my favorite ways to cook carrots is with a roast beef. They just come out so tender and flavorful, and it really is just a very simple way to kind of, do a nice meat and potatoes dish. After a couple of minutes, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the carrots, and then I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to the very hot pan. And then I'm just going to place the meat seasoned side down and just sear it for a couple of minutes. And then while that's searing, I'm just going to go ahead and take the salt and pepper and just season the other side. I just find it's a little bit easier than flipping it over on the counter. So use my tongs. There's also a little bit of fat here, and the Pioneer Woman said to have a nicely marbled piece of meat, but I'm pretty happy with this. A 3.8, it's just the three of us for dinner tonight, and I think the next time I buy a roast like this on sale, I think I will cut it in half. This one was a little bit bigger than what I wanted, just because there's going to be a lot of leftovers, and I will share how I'm doing that. So there is the one side nice and seared, and then the other side seared for 2 minutes. So we're going to take that out, and then I'm just going to take a little bit of the red wine broth and just deglaze the pan. But going into the cooler months, I am definitely going to pick up some nice red wine, probably a Merlot, to just kind of deglaze the pan, and I find it enhances the flavor, and then it just cooks off the alcohol. I have been using this broth. I do like it, but I know just having a little bottle of wine will just really enhance the flavor. And I think it also would have made a really nice deep brown gravy. And then I'm also just going to put a little bit of the thyme and rosemary. And the Pioneer Woman's recipe just said to use some sprigs of the fresh herbs, but I didn't have any of that. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of dried to this broth. And then I'm just going to put the roast back in here. And then I'm going to put the onions and the carrots back in. And then she just said to add enough stock to cover the meat halfway, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just kind of eyeball it. I don't want a lot of liquid because I don't want to make like a big batch of gravy, so I'm just going over the directions. And I love recipes like this. It's just simple ingredients. You really don't have to do a lot, and then once you get everything into the pot, you just open up the oven door and you put that in there. And the recipe said for a 3-pound roast to do it for 3 hours. I'm going to do it for 3.5. I just want enough mashed potatoes for my husband and I, and they say 1 potato per person. So I had 1 larger potato and then 2 smaller ones. So I'm just going to get those peeled, cut up, put them into the pot, and it is time to take the roast out. So this is what it looks like after the 3.5 hours. I didn't check on it. I didn't do anything. I left it into the oven, and then I just took the fork, and you can see it's just tearing apart. And I wanted to try it, and it was perfect. So I have the nice broth, the carrots, and the onions. That is all cooked. I have the potatoes going to a boil. So I do want to make some gravy, and I know in the past I talked about doing smaller batch cooking, and a lot of you are very interested in it, and I don't want a lot of leftovers for the mashed potatoes, so that's why I'm just doing the small batch of mashed potatoes. It's going to be just a perfect amount for the two of us. So I'm going to go ahead and get the roast out and just put it on the plate. I'm just going to put a little bit of tinfoil on it to keep it warm, and then I'm just going to leave the vegetables in here to keep them warm too. And I did a quick Google search just to kind of find the ratio for the perfect gravy. I just want enough gravy just to put over the mashed potatoes, maybe a little bit over the pot roast. So I'm taking 1 cup of the broth, and then I'm just going to do a small batch of gravy. In the past, I would, use all of the broth and I would make all the gravy. So I have 1/4 cup of water and then 2 tablespoons of flour, and I'm just going to mix this all in with my whisk, and then I'm going to put the broth onto the stovetop and then bring it to a boil. And once it does, I'm just going to go ahead and add in the flour, and it thickens up very quickly and just enough gravy for us to enjoy for the night. It's going to be a little bit more than I need, but definitely not as much as what I would have made in the past. Here is our dinner for 3. Our son has autism and has some food sensory issues, and he does not like mashed potatoes or gravy, so I had some nice fresh buns. I made him some roast beef sandwiches and then some sweet potato fries in the air fryer. And here is the perfect pot roast. The gravy was the perfect consistency. The beef, I just used the tongs to break it off, and then the carrots. And somebody was decluttering, and they knew that I liked the Pioneer Woman, and they asked if I would like her plates, and I said yes. And I think it was perfect to enjoy this perfect pot roast dinner. I normally like my white plates, but what better way to enjoy a recipe from the Pioneer Woman than on some of her beautiful plates. We had some roast beef sandwiches for dinner one night and lunches, and just to give our son a break, I took out some just sausage and peppers with like ground Italian sausage. I had it in the freezer, and then I made some fusilli. I did 6 ounces, so that'll give him a couple of dinners and a lunch. And then for us, I'm going to finish off the roast beef, and I thought I'd share this with you. I'm just using what I have, so I cut up the roast, and then I took the rest of the potatoes, and I'm going to make mashed potatoes, but I do want leftovers. I do have a can of peas. I prefer the frozen, but I wanted to clean out my pantry. I had some onions and mushrooms, and I had this package of mushroom gravy, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use that, and then I'm also going to finish off the beef with the red wine stock. I was thinking about making a beef stroganoff, but this was just a little bit easier, and it's a 4-burner night, so I have the olive oil heating up, and then I'm just gonna have the onions and the mushrooms on just a low saute just to kind of cook them down a little bit. I'm gonna season it with a little bit of pepper, and I just enjoy cooking like this, and I know a lot of you like seeing these recipes, and I find that's one of the things, because we're just a small family. This was just too big of a roast for us. So I just made sure that none of it went to waste. So I am doing 1.25 cups of the broth. That's what the gravy packet says. So I'm just doing it into a bowl, and then I'm going to add in the gravy mix and then just whisk it all up, and then I'll add it in, and then I'm just going to make like a roast beef and gravy just to kind of put over the mashed potatoes, and then have the peas on the side. And that's one of the things, is I don't want to dry out the roast beef. That was such an easy pot roast. The 275, just let it cook nice and slow. It was so flavorful. It fell apart, and it just wasn't dry. And I know that's happened in the past. Sometimes you can overcook a roast. So I put the roast beef in here, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of the broth that's left just to kind of deglaze the bottom of the pan, but also give it a little bit of liquid just so the beef doesn't dry out. So I just left it for a couple of minutes, and now I'm going to go in and add that broth mixture with the gravy packet, and then it will simmer up, and then that's when it will start to thicken. And then if I need more water to thin it out, I can use a little bit of the water from the potatoes because it's already starchy. And that's really all that I had to do. So there it is. It's not quite thickened yet, but boy, it thickened up very, very quickly. And then I added a little bit more water just because I wanted a little bit of a gravy texture. So you can see how it really thickened up. So now I'm adding a little bit of the potato water. I didn't want it to be too dry, but this turned out perfect. The meat It was so flavorful, and it wasn't dry. It was just very tender, and it was just perfect. I know it's not pretty, but it tasted delicious. I just put a little bit of parsley on the top and then the peas on the side. And of course I used the Pioneer Woman plates again. So I hope you enjoyed this What's for Dinner video. If you want to see more of these, please, comment, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. And then we had leftovers. So there's the pasta and then a couple of lunches for my husband. So thanks for watching, everybody. I really hope that you enjoyed this. And the next roast that I get, I'm definitely going to cut it in half, but also take advantage of the sale prices.